Let's continue this discussion now with Ben Bradley, the Conservative MP for Mansfield, of course, a former vice-chairman of the Conservative Party, someone who knows CCHQ, as it's known, very well. How important is the role of party chairman in the mechanics of all of this?
Well, really important at the minute. I think as we lead into a general election, the party chairman is responsible for organising that, in effect, for funding it, for getting boots on the ground, campaign managers and the people who deliver that in constituencies. So over the course of this next kind of 12, 18 months, really, really important, yeah.
And when we're expecting this sort of new person to be in place, the big thing coming up are these local elections. Now, alongside your role as an MP, you're also a councillor, a council leader, in fact. How are you feeling about these local elections?
I'm pleased that my council's not up this year, but it's interesting because if you look at where we were 4 years ago, the last time this round of elections came around, actually we're building on quite a low base. It was just after Theresa May had announced we were going to have another set of European elections, and I think we were on about 19% in the polls then. So it's not just a case of where we are now, but where we are relative to then in terms of election results. So I don't think it will be as bad as people predict, but certainly not easy times, is it?
That is incredibly interesting because, of course, there's been a great deal of what's known as expectation management. People saying these are going to be the worst local elections ever for the Conservative Party. If the vote is not down particularly on that big nadir from where it was under Theresa May, these were the local elections that quickly preceded her resignation as Prime Minister. Perhaps Rishi Sunak's team have been putting out all of these words that it's going to be the worst set of local elections ever, and when it's not, that might be a boost.
We all do that, don't we? We manage people's kind of thought process in that way, but in truth, that was the low ebb of the end of Theresa May's kind of premiership. Boris came into the summer, and obviously we won big in December, which is why I don't hold too much store by what the polls say kind of this far out. But you take my constituency, for example, we got 65% of the vote in the local elections, 65% of the councillors at county level 2 years ago. We've got 8% of the seats in the election that are coming up in a few months' time. So it can only really go one way.
That's really, really interesting. What do you think, then, could happen in the next year and a half, 2 years, to do that same sort of turnaround? Because looking at the polls right now, it is dire for your party. Around 20 points in the polls, 20 points behind the Labour Party on top of that. Can that be turned around?
Well, I think the proof that we've just discussed is, you know, in 6 months from that summer of 2019 to December, it went from 20 points in the polls to an 85-seat majority. It can be. I think Rishi, government, whoever's there after today, needs to grasp the nettle on some certain issues. He picked some of the right priorities, I think, in terms of health, waiting lists, small boats and illegal migration, things that are the biggest things that come across my desk as a Member of Parliament. But if people are going to trust us on those issues enough to support us again, it's got to deliver. We've got to get to a point by the end of the year where he's met those priorities, where he has improved the economy, where we have seen waiting lists, small boats shrink significantly, if not disappear. And if we don't do that, then we're going to struggle to get the trust of the public.
Now, you were one of these poster boys post-2017 of people who could actually win in the red wall. And levelling up has been such a contentious element of the last 2-3 Prime Ministers' agendas. Is Rishi Sunak as committed to levelling up as Boris Johnson was?
Well, in the conversations I've had with him and with Jeremy Hunt, that's the phrase has been used, the language has been used. I think perhaps we've been too focused all the way through on some of the pots of capital cash. We've got announcements of levelling up funds and things like that, which are great and will help us with things like town centre regeneration. But really, that renewal, that kind of rebuilding communities in places that have been left behind very often is a long-term game, right? It's skills, it's culture, it's community support and local services. Those things don't get fixed in, one term even, they're generational. So it will take a long time to deliver. We need to see that commitment because in many ways, those capital projects and delivery, again, trusting that we can deliver the things we promise, are kind of the down payment for us to have the trust of the public to do the long-term stuff.
Now, just finally, are you keeping your phone on loud this morning? Are you expecting any potential phone calls from number 10?
I'm hoping desperately that I don't get one.
Well, Ben Bradley, thank you so much for joining us here on The Briefing. Really appreciate your thoughts.